Hello, namaste, welcome, good afternoon, everybody. I bow in reverence and gratitude to those of you joining me in the room, to those of you joining me on Zoom, and to those of you listening to the recording afterward. Welcome to Living from the Heart, a Dharma talk about this incredible journey of 18 inches from the head to the heart. Today's topic is on everyday Dharma, the Dharma of our daily lives. And I'd like to begin with a poem by John Fox. And if it's true we are alone together, the way blades of grass are alone but exist as a field. Sometimes I feel it, the green fuse that ignites us, the wild thrum that unites us, an inner hum that reminds us of our shared humanity. Just as 35 trillion red blood cells join in one body to become one blood, just as 136,000 notes make up one symphony, alone as we are, our small voices weave into the one big conversation. Our actions are essential to the one infinite story of what it is to be alive. When we feel alone, we belong to the grand communion of those who sometimes feel alone. We are the dust that hopes, a rising of dust, a thrill of dust, the dust that dances in the light with all other dust, the dust that makes the world. When someone deeply listens to you, it is like holding out a dented cup you've had since childhood and watching it fill up with cold, fresh water. When it balances on top of the brim, you are understood. When it overflows and touches your skin, you are loved. When someone deeply listens to you, the room where you stay starts a new life, and the place where you wrote your first poem begins to glow in your mind's eye. It is as if gold has been discovered. When someone deeply listens to you, your bare feet are on the earth, and a beloved land that seemed distant is now at home within you. Such a powerful poem entitled, When Someone Deeply Listens to You. Speaking to the power of our attention, speaking to the most precious gift we have to offer anyone in this life, our presence, our kind, non-judgmental, open-hearted attention. And this is the essence of our spiritual practice, discovering the power of our attention, discovering that what we do pay attention to deeply matters. And you can pay attention to anything. That is our ultimate goal, to be with what is happening right here and to touch things as they are. And this is where we gain the insights of the Dharma in the here and now, by paying attention to the here and now, by paying attention to exactly what is right in front of us. This is how we gain true insight. This is how we gain the truth, our sat, by simply paying attention. If you pay attention to anything in your life, you will gain Dharma. You will gain insight and truth and understanding. And to exemplify this teaching, I would like to talk about our everyday and everything Dharma. I have in my hand a single cup. And I like to say, if you pay attention to this cup, if you truly are with this cup or any cup, you will gain insight into the nature of things. And scientists would also agree with this sentiment. The laws of nature, the laws of science are applicable everywhere. You can imagine that if you had the right instruments, you would also be able to elucidate the laws of nature and the universe. Within this cup, there is the theory of relativity, the law of gravity, the laws of thermodynamics. If you had precise enough instruments to fully examine the nature of this cup, you would eventually be able to come up with the entire periodic table of elements. Within this cup is the structure of the atom. Within this cup is the structure of how atoms combine to create larger molecules and larger objects that make up our everyday life. If you were to examine this cup deeply, you would know that the matter that makes up this cup came from the stars. And how this cup came to be, you would elucidate all the mysteries of the universe if you had the right instrument and the right amount of time to elucidate these truths. And our spiritual teachings are concerned also with truth, a truth that is universal, irrespective of time and place. And our instrument is not a microscope. It is not a particle accelerator. Our instrument in the discovery of truth and spiritual truth is our own mind. And when you become fully present with something, you will know all that you need to know. This is the great lesson of our meditative and contemplative traditions. Just become present, and you will know all that it is that you need to know. So just become present with a cup, and it will tell you all that you need to know. So before I go into some of the things that the cup has to teach us, consider yourself. What are some things I can learn from a cup? And one of the first things we begin to understand is the nature of emptiness. Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching wrote this: 30 spokes share the hub of a wheel, yet it is its center that makes it useful. We mold clay into a pot, but it is the emptiness inside that makes the vessel useful. We fashion wood for a house, but it is the emptiness inside that makes it livable. We work with the substantial, but the emptiness is what we use. Again, such profundity in a few lines. 30 spokes share the hub of a wheel, yet it is its center that makes it useful. I find that's a key line when you look into how to be a great leader. You are not in charge of everyone. You are what allows everyone to work together to form the wheel, to be a mode of locomotion that allows you to go where you need to go. It is the center of the wheel. It is the hub in the middle of all the spokes that makes it useful. So too, although we identify with the boundaries of the cup as the cup, the usefulness of a cup is the hollowness that is inside. It is the emptiness that is inside. So it teaches us to cultivate a spacious and clear mind. A clear sky is beautiful. A clear mind is just as beautiful. The more empty something is, the more useful it becomes. And as we understand the nature of how empty, the quality of empty is useful, we understand the deeper nature of emptiness, shunyata. Shunya meaning empty, and ta meaning the quality of. Satya is truthfulness, and shunyata is emptiness. So if we were to take again and examine this cup, we might see what is inside. And this particular cup is empty of water. It is empty of tea. It is empty of anything you can currently use to drink. However, because it is empty of water, it is full of something else. It is full of air. So anytime we say something is empty, we are of course meaning it is empty of something. This cup is empty of water, empty of tea, but it is not empty of air. So, too, when we analyze any particular thing in this universe, we see that it also carries the qualities of emptiness. We say all things are inherently empty. Within the cup, there is no cupness. If you examine any particular object, you will see that it is composed of other things. When you look at a car, how do we use the term car? Is the car in the wheels? Is the car in the engine? Is the car in the windows? The answer to all these questions is, of course, no. So we must conclude that the car is made up of non-car elements. And so, too, we could say the cup is made up of non-cup elements. Is the cup in the aluminum? Is the cup in the polish? We can say that the cup is full of non-cup elements, just as the flower is made up of non-flower elements. If you look deeply into the flower, you will be able to see the plant that grew it, the earth that nourished it, and the sky and sun and rain that gave the flower what it needed in order to blossom. And even today is quite rainy. And I am reminded of the quote by Thich Nhat Hanh: "The tears I cried yesterday have already become the rain today." We know everything is flowing into and out of everything else. A certain set of causes and conditions has resulted in this cup before me, but eventually this cup will break and decay and return to the earth. So we do have a phrase: if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. But we might conclude this phrase with, it is made up of duck elements, but none of these things are inherently duck. So this is our shunyata, our emptiness. And if we apply this to ourselves, we come up with anatta, anatman, meaning non-self, meaning no I. So when we say there is non-self, again, it is like a cup saying it is empty of water. It is simply saying that there's an emptiness of a particular quality. In this case, there is empty of a separate and isolated self. And we come to this understanding through discriminative wisdom, through our own mind, through the instrument of our mind, through inquiry. So Shantideva in the Way of the Bodhisattva says this: "The teeth, the hair, the nails are not the eye, and eye is not the bones or blood. The mucus from the nose and the phlegm are not the eye, and neither is it made of lymph or pus. The eye is not the body's grease or sweat. The lungs and liver likewise do not constitute it. Neither are the inner organs eye, nor yet the body's excrement and waste. The flesh and skin are not the eye, and neither are the body's warmth and breath. The cavities within the frame are not the eye, and eye is not accounted for in sixfold consciousness." So anytime we take apart anything, we discover it is made up of elements. So if I were to take apart this cup, of course, I would never find any soul of the cup, any perfect Euclidean geometry of cupness. I will, of course, just have shards and pieces of a cup. I will never find an inherent cup essence. So too, we apply this to ourselves, that this body is made up of non-self elements. And through this combination of these elements and a certain set of causes and conditions, we do exist for a particular period of time. However, we can easily use the instrument of the mind to cleave this illusion of any sense of isness or I-ness or separateness or an isolated sense of self. So when we say emptiness, it is always empty of an isolated existence. So this is one of the most profound and perhaps direct ways to alleviate ourselves of our own suffering, which is crucial to the spiritual practices of the East. We are here to free ourselves of suffering. And perhaps one of the most direct ways to do that is to let go of the I that is suffering. If there is no self to suffer, then there is no suffering. So again, we can turn to Shantideva. If such a thing as I exists indeed, then terrors granted will torment it. But since no self or I exists at all, what is there left for fears to terrify? Hmm. So it's important to recognize that being and non being arise together. Cup and not cup arise together. The question is not to be or not to be, because to be and not to be are two sides of the same coin, two ways to describe the same phenomenon. To be implies not to be, just as cup implies non cup, just as foreground implies background. North implies south, east implies west, up implies down. So that is the first lesson we can learn from the cup. The lesson of emptiness, shunyata, the lesson of non-self or anatta. And also that usefulness is in emptiness. The emptiness of a room is what makes it useful. So, too, much of our spiritual practice involves unlearning, involves unknowing, involves decluttering the mind, seeing our meditation practice as a kind of mental floss or mental hygiene designed to clear the clutter of the mind. Perhaps the most famous example of this is when the infamous college professor goes to see the Zen master and asks the master to teach him about Zen. And the Zen master says, I can do that, but let us sit for tea first. And the professor doesn't want to sit around and drink tea, he wants to talk about high philosophical concepts, but he relents and sits down with the Zen master. And the master starts to pour tea into the cup. And as the master pours into the cup fills up and fills up and fills up until the cup completely overflows. And finally, the professor's like, stop, stop. The cup is overflowing. You're getting tea everywhere. Please stop. And as the story goes, the Zen master turned to the professor and said, this cup is your mind. How could I possibly teach it anything when it is overflowing already? So, this is something I've also found on this path, the unlearning, the deconditioning that needs to happen in order for us to gain truth on the path. We have to let go of illusion. When I was originally learning about the 5 or 6 elements that you often find in certain esoteric systems, it took me a long time to kind of let go of the rigid hold I had on the periodic table of elements. My cup was so full that I had to almost redefine what the term element meant for me in order to integrate different models and understandings of the universe into my own life. So, this is the essence of the beginner's mind, what I like to call the don't know mind. Recognizing that we don't know because we can't know, because the mind is limited. So, the beginner's mind is that which sees everything anew. It is the empty cup that is able to be filled up with new knowledge and new understanding about the world. There's a story of a famous rabbi on his deathbed, and everyone in the village wanted to have their last words with the rabbi, so people were lined up to see him. And the person at the very front of the line leans in, and the rabbi whispers to this person, life is like a fountain. And the person hears this and says, wow, and turns around and says, life is like a fountain. And the person in second in line turns around, and then all the way down this line, the message gets carried through. Finally, a young child at the end of the line says, But how is life like a fountain? And that message gets carried all the way to the front. How is life? How is life? How is life? And finally, the person at the front goes, but Rabbi, how is life like a fountain? And the rabbi says, maybe it's not like a fountain. Even the end of our lives, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen after we die. We can embrace the don't know mind as a way of embracing and being with this mystery of life. There's another story of a meeting at the Unitarian Church, which was designed to bring in people of all different belief systems. And they said, you know what? We have to come up with a new word for this divine. So many words people conflate with certain things. And of course, the Christians said, how about God? And the pagans said, how about goddess? And the Native Americans said, how about Great Spirit? And finally, people debated and debated until they finally landed on, how about the Great Mystery? The great unknowable unknown, as a rabbi once told me. That's what we are here to embrace. We are here to empty our cup, to cultivate the beginner's mind, to cultivate an empty and clear mind that, like the clear blue sky, is open and ready for anything. So, along with emptiness, along with emptying the mind, we can also recognize that this cup, like everything else in this universe, will not last. There's a famous story with the Thai monk Ajahn Chah, where he holds up a cup and says, you see this cup? For me, this glass is already broken. I enjoy it. I drink out of it. It holds my water admirably, sometimes even reflecting the sun in beautiful patterns. If I should tap it, it has a lovely ring to it. But when I put this glass on the shelf and the wind knocks it over, or my elbow brushes it off the table and it falls to the ground and shatters, I say, of course. When I understand that the glass is already broken, every moment with it is precious. Such a profound darshan, such a profound worldview to look at a glass and recognize it is already broken. To have a non dual understanding that embraces both glass and non glass. And this is a deeper insight into the nature of life, because life, of course, implies death. The two go hand in hand, just as being implies non-being, life implies death. And as Chogyam Trungpa would say, if you don't understand death, life can seem pretty confusing. So it's important to recognize the key spiritual insight that nothing lasts. And much of our suffering is a result of thinking that things are permanent, wanting things to be permanent, and holding on to things when they begin to fade away. This is the fundamental lesson of the Buddha, that we get attached to things. We want things to remain as they are. We want our children not to grow up. We want our car to remain just as shiny and scratch and dent free as it was the day that we found it. And our attempts to make things and keep things permanent in of itself causes a lot of suffering. A very silly example I sometimes offer on how our attempt at permanence creates suffering is with a material you might know of called asbestos. And in modern times, we know asbestos is terrible on the body and causes a lot of cancers. A lot of people don't know why that is, or why we even started to use asbestos in the first place. And one of the reasons asbestos was so useful for something like fire suppression and insulation is because it is essentially indestructible. You can't burn it. It doesn't burn. It stays exactly as it is. So you can imagine it's a wonderful thing to build your house out of if you want to make your house fireproof. Well, unfortunately, its indestructibility, when it comes into our own bodies, it remains in our own bodies and causes a number of ill effects, like cancer. So, unfortunately, our desire to make things permanent in of itself will cause us a lot of suffering. And of course, our spiritual practice and our spiritual path is to learn this art of letting go. A.R. Emmons puts it this way: the wind went over me, saying, "Why are you so distressed?" "Oh," I said, "I can't seem to make anything round enough to last." "But why," the wind said, "should you be so distressed? As if anything here belonged to you, as if anything here were your concern." So you might be able to already intuit how connected these ideas are. Emptiness, non self, impermanence, and letting go. These are all deeply connected ideas. There are a few things we are attached to as our own thinking. There are a few things we are attached to as our own ego, and all of the things it likes to latch onto. My political beliefs, my car, my house, my partner. These are things we get attached to. And in letting go of it all and discovering there is nothing to cling to as I, me, our mind, we in turn feel an alleviation of our suffering. We realize, as A.R. Emmons so wonderfully put it, that nothing here belongs to us, and therefore nothing here is of our concern. Our task is to let things be as they are, including ourselves, letting ourselves be as we are, in order to touch reality as it is. And this taps us directly into our experience. So, a somewhat controversial idea on this path of presence, being here now, discovering the power of now, is what exactly this now entails. For example, if you're thinking of the past or thinking of the future, you are doing that in the now. So, who could say anything that we're doing is not presence? And in my opinion, we can take an Occam's razor to this dilemma to really understand that if you are in your mind, you are not present. You cannot run your storylines and get caught up in your own thinking and be present at the same time. The mind is what takes us out of the present moment, not just into the past or the future, but through an analysis that pretends that we are somehow separate from this living, existing reality. So it's the mind that takes us away from the here and now, and it's the body, this sensing, experiencing, breathing, and heart beating body that is always in the present moment. All you have to do to become present is to tap into this flow of experience that is your body. And this is another lesson of the cup. Yoga and tantric teachings are often described as being handed a cup. The cup is just the container. What matters more is the water inside the cup. What matters more is drinking the water from the cup, because only that will nourish you. The word water will not quench your thirst. The word God will not get you in touch with the divine. Being handed a cup will not serve you unless you actually drink the water that lies therein. This is a different way to conceptualize the finger pointing at the moon. The finger is conceptual thinking. The moon is awakened reality. It is our experience. And we must recognize there will always be a difference between the explained world, what can be explained by the mind, and the experienced world. We mustn't confuse the menu for the dinner. We mustn't be that professor that goes to the restaurant to eat the menu without even ordering the dinner. The college professor is just the most quintessential example of somebody who is completely in their mind, in the world of the explained, and out of touch with the actual lived experience of our life. So, another professor story. At a prestigious university, professor of yogic studies decides he wants to go deeper into this world of yoga. So he ventures off into the forest and he sees a number of yogis lying naked on a rock, bathing in the hot sun. And the professor asks them, "Will you teach me the wisdom of yoga?" And one of the yogis sits up and says, "Yes, of course. But first, you must strip naked and lie here on these rocks." Because, of course, we are here to tap into an experience. The Google Map directions will not take you where you need to go. The yoga path is a path you must walk, it is an experience you must do. So people get caught up in the finger rather than looking at the moon. People get caught up in the cup rather than look inside the cup. Just as we get caught up in our outward appearances without focusing on our internal experience. There's a line from Kabir I love. A yogi wears his beautiful orange, but if inside he is colorless, then what? I think about this so often because we can often make our yoga practice one of a performance, one of showing off. Not only do we want to wear sort of ostentatious clothing with many colors, but we also want to put our body in very fancy, different positions. But yoga is not what you are doing, it is what you are thinking. It is not the outward expression of your body, it is the inward experience of your own consciousness. So it is our inner experience that matters. Swami Satchidananda put it this way: spiritual practice is not what you are doing, but what you are thinking. What is the motivation for your actions? So in our yoga asana practice, we don't use the body to get into the pose. There's no perfect alignment that we are trying to find in our yoga pose practice. We use the pose to get into the body. Yoga offers a variety of positions that we can then use to bring the mind into the body. Feel the body as it moves like this. What muscles are getting stretched? How does the sensation of stretch feel? Every pose is just an object of meditation in order to anchor the mind into the body and into your lived experience. Because again, we are here to touch life as it is. As Uzima Shikibu put it, should I leave this burning house of ceaseless thought and taste the pure rain's single truth falling upon my skin? That is our path, friends. To leave the mind and taste the pure rain's single truth falling upon our skins, to tap in to this rich experience of life. The cup is here to teach us about the difference between the explained world and the experienced one. And in this experienced world, we find the whole universe. We find all that is. By getting in touch with one thing, we get in touch with all things. We discover that how we live this moment is how we live every moment. Again, we can look at Kabir. Inside this clay jug, there are canyons and pine mountains. And the maker of canyons and pine mountains All seven oceans are inside, and hundreds of millions of stars. The acid that tests gold is there, and the one who judges jewels. And the music from the strings that no one touches, and the source of all water. If you want the truth, I will tell you the truth. Friend, listen. The God who I love is inside. So, what is the cup empty of? Water. What is it full of? The whole universe. This is our darshan. This is seeing the world fully awake and fully wide open. As Rumi put it, if in thirst you drink water from a cup, you see God in it. Those who are not in love with God will see only their own faces in it. Ooh. What an incredible take. If we're stuck in our own egoic identity, we look into the cup and we see only our own reflection. But if we have let go of anything we cling to as I, me, or mine, we find the divine. We find the entire universe, the entire cosmos in the cup. We can see the cloud that rained upon the earth. We can see the water that unites all of life. And we can see the matter that was made up in stars and supernovas that exploded their atoms of oxygen and hydrogen across the entire universe. Hmm. So you might have a hard time coming to this understanding if our mind is already full, if all we see in the cup is water. So there's another really important insight that we can take of what it truly means to empty our mind and why we might want to empty the mind. And Patanjali gives us insight into why we want our mind to be clear in order to absorb spiritual teachings, because we don't want to use the right teaching in the wrong way. We don't want to distort the teachings that we are receiving, especially manipulating the teachings for our own egoic needs. So in the yams and the niyams, the yamas and the niyamas, one of the most crucial ones is saucha, which means purity. And it means cleanliness of the body, so keeping the body clean with your jalaneti and sutranetis and shat kriyas and purification practices. But it also means purity of mind, because even the most pure spiritual teachings put into a poisonous mind will themselves become poisonous. So, in preparing this talk, I looked up how much cyanide do you need in water to make it toxic? And according to the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, the maximum contaminant level for cyanide in drinking water is 0.2 milligrams per liter. 0.2 milligrams, so 2/10,000ths of a gram. You have that in a cup of water and you put a liter of water in it. That is still contaminated. That is still undrinkable water. And I think we have seen the violence that has been propagated throughout history by those leaders of certain spiritual and religious traditions, that they themselves had poisonous minds, so that even the most pure of spiritual teachings became distorted and used for evil acts. So we are here to purify the mind of ill will, hatred, and delusion. Again, we can turn to Shantideva. Just as seeping venom fills the body, carried on the current of the blood, an evil thought that finds its chance will spread and permeate the mind. Okay. So this is why the Dalai Lama said that kindness is like water and religion is like tea. This is such a wonderful metaphor. Water is a necessity. We cannot live without water, but we can live without tea. So all of our practice should be rooted in kindness. This is why the Dalai Lama says his religion is kindness, because it is like water. Religion is like tea. It's a luxury that adds flavor and is delicious and can often make water a little bit more palatable, a little bit more enjoyable. And of course, people have different preferences of what kind of tea that they like. And you might have different preferences around which religion or spirituality you most resonate with. And that's wonderful. It's wonderful flavor to our lives. But religion is the tea and kindness is the water. Love is the water. We must make sure the ultimate essence of whatever practices we choose are kindness, compassion, and love. And again, it's not easy. That's why it's a yoga practice and not a yoga perfect. We are here to recognize those poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion, purify the mind, and fill it up with the pure intention of love, kindness, and compassion. There's a story of two young brothers who are arguing over who is going to have the last pancake at the dinner table. And the mother sits up straight and says, if Jesus were here, he would say, let my brother have the last pancake. And this made the brothers pause. And finally, one turns to the other one and says, you get to be Jesus. So again, we can easily manipulate pure teachings for our own needs. This is why we must clear the mind. This is why we must let go of our own egoic identity to put ourselves on the path of karma yoga, the path of selfless service. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj said this: as long as you take yourself to be a person, a body and a mind, separate from the stream of life, having a will of its own, pursuing its own aims, you are living merely on the surface, and whatever you do will be short-lived and of little value. When you desire and fear and identify yourself with your feelings, you create sorrow and bondage. When you create with love and wisdom and remain unattached to your creations, the result is harmony and peace. Keep in mind your goal of freedom until it dawns on you that you are already free. That freedom is not something in the distant future to be earned with painful efforts, but perennially one's own to be used. Liberation is not an acquisition, but a matter of courage, the courage to believe that you are free already and to act on it. We are free here and now. It is only the mind that imagines bondage. Once you know your mind and its miraculous powers and remove what poisoned it, the idea of a separate and isolated person, you just leave it alone to do its work, among things for which it is well suited. So, yes, friends, this cup, the single cup, has so much to teach us about love. When you do hear this practice of non-self, of letting go of the ego, you must also recognize a key finding that in order to let go of your ego, you have to have one in the first place. The essential teaching is that you have to become somebody before you become nobody. You must have a strong sense of self before you can let go of it. If you already have low self-esteem, low self-confidence, few boundaries, someone telling you to let go of the few boundaries that you have is not going to be the teaching that you need at this point in your life. Richard Rohr calls this the first half of life and the second half of life. We must complete the first half of life of knowing who we are, feeling strong in who we are, having an understanding of law and order and love for one another. And then we can move on to the second half of life. So when we do think about a cup and what it means to fill up our cup, we must recognize it's hard to fill up a cup with holes in it, with leaks out of the bottom. If we make a cup out of just taking a piece of paper and putting it into a cup shape and pour water into it, the paper will dissolve away and not hold anything. So, this is a final lesson of the cup. Boundaries are key to self love. This is a lesson I have found again and again. Sometimes self love means saying no. No, I will not do this thing that you are asking of me because I need to take care of myself. We must take care of ourselves. We must make sure we eat well, sleep well, not have too much stress in our life, have meaning in our lives, and have strong social relations. And that often means setting up firm and strong boundaries. So, yes, you do have to fill up your own cup first. It's true. And part of filling up your own cup first means shoring up your cup. It means removing the leaks from the cup and giving it strong boundaries in order for the cup to become full. So that way, the cup will overflow. That's how it works. Our cup gets overflowing, and then it's able to fill up other people's cups. A lot of people feel like loving others when they're depleted is like they have a cup that's only half full and they have to pour what little they have into somebody else's cup. That's not how it works, my friends. We must shore up our cup so then it fills up with love and then overflows to the people around us. Then we can fill another's cup. And one profound way to do that is to drop our cup into the ocean of being, into the ground of being. You can't fit the ocean into a thimble, but you can put the thimble into the ocean. So, another part of the spiritual path is recognizing the divine love that is here, already here, and everywhere. Rumi again says this: ecstatic love is an ocean, and the Milky Way is a flake of foam floating on it. My goodness, ecstatic love is an ocean, and the Milky Way is a flake of foam floating on it. Just listen to the mystics. They know they have gotten in touch with the ground of being that is nothing less than ecstatic, joyful, unconditional love. So if you're on your deathbed, you can drop your cup into the ocean and let it dissolve. But for those of us that still enjoy being in this body, we shore up our cup, drop it into the ocean of love, and we float there at peace. Our cup remains for as long as we need to. The entire Milky Way is just a flake of foam on the ocean of ecstatic love. So, that, my friends, is our lessons. Our lessons from paying attention to one single thing. And if we pay attention to any other thing, we will learn all that we need to know. This is why Vipassana practice has you focus on the inhale and the exhale. This is why the most precious gift we have to offer another person is our loving presence. Because in offering that loving presence, without any agenda, without any desire to change or improve the person that we are attending to, they blossom like flowers, and we see them as they are, as we welcome in all that they can be. Mm. But don't take my word for it. Next time you are drinking, not only can you mindfully eat, but you can mindfully drink. Mindfully taste the next luscious, nourishing liquid that comes to your lips. Pay deep attention to it, and you will find everything it is that you need to know. You will find the divine. You will find God. You will find the entire universe, and you will find yourself. So thank you, thank you, thank you. From one open heart to another, for sharing and spending your precious and valuable time with me today. Namaste.